This movie is quite novel. And like every novel, it has a beginning, middle, and end. From the beginning, Alan Moore hated it. The movie itself is middle of the road. And it brought the end to Sean Connery's career. On this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. I'm your host, Laramy Wells, and joining me today in the co-host chair are two of my extraordinary co-hosts. First, she brings her own blend of wisdom, wit, and a touch of mystery. It's my wife, Bethany Wells.
Bazinga.
There it is.
Okay. And next, if he ever has to face a true portrait of his puns, he'd lose all his magic. It's the dapper Southern gent, Blake Fowler.
I resemble that remark, okay?
All right, so here we are.
We're setting a really good tone here at the beginning.
Well, I was going to go with a terrible Sean Connery impression first, but decided against it very quickly.
Oh, you mean like Peter Wilson does in the movie?
Yes, absolutely. Except mine is worse.
Yeah. Well, you know, let's tell that story real quick. So, Peter Wilson was asked to do the impression. She was worried about doing it because she knew that was a thing with Sean Connery, doing impersonations of him around him was a no-no. And so she asked if he could do it, if she could do it. He said it was okay. She did it, and then Sean said that was great. And she was like, "Really?" He was like, "Oh, it was horrible, but that's why it was so great."
That's awesome. I say mine is more of an impression of Will Ferrell's Alex Trebek's
Daryl Hammond.
Jeopardy, Daryl Hammond. Yeah, Daryl Hammond. So no,
finish my dear Trebek.
I decided against it.
So of course, we are talking about League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, continuing our. Let's just do all of the Alan Moore adaptations.
The Alan Moore gauntlet, Laramy.
Yes.
Okay.
We started at Halloween with From Hell. We then in November did V for Vendetta. We then discussed just Alan Moore adaptations.
Yep.
And said, you know what? We got to get League in. So here we are on New Year's Day. We are doing League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And then in March, we will finish out the Alan Moore adaptations as currently there are with Watchmen.
Is there a better way to start your new year than talking about, and I'm going to say it, an underrated film such as League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? I'm going to be that person on this episode.
You can.
Okay.
Yeah. No. You're not in the minority in this episode.
Just making sure, because Laramy gave the middle description, not the middle finger to the movie, but the middle description to the movie. And it gives me pause for concern, but we'll talk about that later.
So let's go ahead and ask that about this then. So Blake, I'll start with you. What was when did you first see this movie? So the movie came out in July of 2003.
Yeah, I saw it probably a couple of years after, because I remember being a senior in high school, which would have been 2005. And that would have been the first time I would have watched it. And again, I really enjoyed it. And the reason I watched it is because I watched The Ghost in the Darkness. And I think maybe we've talked about that on this podcast before. But that's Val Kilmer goes down to Africa to hunt a couple of lions. I think it's based on a true story. But for some reason, I was then reading up on the movie afterwards. And other movies with settings in Africa came up. And if you haven't seen League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, there's a portion of the movie right at the beginning where it's set in Africa. And so that popped up. I was like, oh, I didn't know that this was a movie. So I found out it was a graphic novel also, and kind of killed two birds with one stone there. Did them both, probably 2005. First time I would have seen this.
Okay. How about you, Bethany?
I probably saw the movie not too long after it came out. I'm pretty sure I had it on DVD. I enjoyed the movie a lot. I didn't know it was a graphic novel until you told me recently. And I like classic literature. I like when anything takes classic ideals and literature, things like that, classic art, and modernizes them in a way where it introduces it to a brand new audience. Like, for the longest time, that is the only way I knew anything about The Portrait of Dorian Gray.
Yeah.
So, like, going into high school, already kind of having a little, like, obviously this isn't the best jumping off.
Yeah, I was like, hey, you're getting really into classic literature with the League there, but no, you're right.
I mean, it just introduces it in a way where it might spark interest and makes people look into it more.
Yeah.
And I always appreciate stuff like that.
Which I will say will be a focus of this episode, is talking about...
there's a lot of like little
where a lot of this
Easter eggs, I guess, that are dropped throughout here for classic literature things. Sure.
Yeah. And with me, it's pretty much the same. Like, I also a big fan of when they take, already existing works and they put a twist on it. I was a big fan of the 10-man miniseries that came on Sci-Fi. That was a twist on Wizard of Oz. There's a book series called the Looking Glass Wars, which puts a twist on Alice in Wonderland. So yeah, I've always been a huge fan of that, and that's what pulled me to this. I actually didn't know it was a comic book before and I probably saw it kind of the same. I'm pretty sure I did not see it in theaters, but I probably saw it like right after it came out on Blu-ray, or not Blu-ray, on DVD.
I thought I'd say HD DVD there.
Yeah, Blu-ray. Yeah, because that was before the battle between which company would have the next format.
Turns out Netflix.
Yeah, it's like
the internet.
Like, now we're to streaming, so no one.
Which this movie is not streaming anywhere.
Okay, let's talk about that. So, listeners, I need a donation plate passed around for $3.99 so I can watch this on Apple.
I mean, luckily, I do own the DVD.
Yeah, I do not.
And again, DVD. I don't own on Blu-ray. I have it on DVD. But I was surprised that it is not.
Nobody's streaming anywhere. Like Max, I figured would have maybe picked it up. That's where I looked.
Disney Plus, because it's a 20th Century Fox movie.
So the UK Disney Plus does carry it. Apparently, I did find that out.
Yeah, Disney Plus, or because it is, what it is. Maybe Hulu.
Maybe
because it is a Fox movie.
Sure. And
since they own Fox now, you would think they would have the ability to just put it on.
Well, they don't.
Apparently not. But let's get into the background of the movie. So it was released July 11th of 2003. It is directed by Stephen Norrington. He has only directed 4 movies. I have only seen 2 of them.
This is one of my favorite parts, first of all, every episode. Yeah. Like, I love hearing what else the director has done.
Well, I mean, if you're not familiar, he directed Blade.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can see that. It's a similar, like, color paletting as far as, like, contrast, like, real contrasty, very dark colors. Okay.
Bad
similar
CGI.
Yeah, okay. We'll talk about that in a minute. Leave it for a minute.
But yeah, the other 2 movies, I didn't even write them down. I didn't even recognize them. But I do want to point out that he directed this movie in 2003, and he hasn't directed anything since.
This killed so many careers.
All right. Speaking of, the writer of the movie that adapted the comic was James Dale Robinson. He is a comic book writer, a British comic book writer. In fact, he co-created DC's Starman in the 90s.
Okay.
He revived the Justice Society in the late 90s. And after this movie in 2008, he would co-write the New Krypton story arc. But he did the screenplay for this, and he has not done a live action film since.
Big yikes. The word curse comes to mind for this movie.
I don't think it's fair. I'm sure it lost a ton of money.
Oh, it had to have lost a boatload, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't usually look into that stuff.
CGI that they had to use for. But 2003
CGI. 2003 CGI.
It's gonna be.
Which makes a lot of sense. And I think about it. I guess we'll get it in a minute. The like super hide looks eerily similar to the Blade, like a lot of the Blade stuff. Like, now that I'm thinking back on it.
But then you've got Sean Connery. You've got so many people that are not cheap to hire.
Well, I like I said, I don't usually look into the money and all that. I did see that it debuted number 2 at the box office behind Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh.
So what a great time!
Didn't realize they came out at the same time.
And that's probably why I missed it in the theater. Is we probably went and saw Pirates. Yeah.
Yeah, we were all too busy being pirates and talking like Jack Sparrow.
Absolutely, I still do, which is a problem at parties for my wife, really.
And that's why we don't get invited out.
That's why I don't go anywhere.
But I did see that a bulk of the budget did go to Sean Connery.
I'd imagine so.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
this dude knew it was going to be his last movie. He was like, back that truck up.
Yeah. Granted, most of the characters, the book itself is, you've got to pay Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill and all of that, but they're public domain characters.
All but one.
All but one.
Yeah. Which we'll talk about, yeah.
But that movie looked expensive, even for the time, even now, minus some of the CGI stuff, especially whenever Hyde would,
it held up pretty well.
There's a handful of things.
A couple of moments.
Bethany kept making comments about the CGI. I kind of am on the same boat as you, Blake. I didn't think the CGI was that bad.
Yeah, for
I'm keeping in mind that it's an early 2000s movie.
There's a handful of moments where you're just like, oh.
Yeah, I can see
where it becomes obvious the year it was released, but for the most part, it's not bad.
Yeah, again, most of it held up pretty well. Bethany's absolutely correct. There's a couple of moments where I was taken out of the movie because the CG was so bad.
Super high.
For just a second. And then went back.
And then when Dorian Gray changed, that was
it was really
cringy.
It was.
I will say the worst CGI for me is actually the henchman who drinks all of the Hyde formula.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
That's what y'all are calling.
Yeah, the Super Hyde.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't know what to call it.
Yeah.
What do you? Yeah.
And he was so
the
scary.
Red Hulk.
Yeah, Red Hulk. That's okay. Thank you. I'm glad I wasn't the only one that thought that. I don't have to pay anybody royalties for a public domain figure and mentions
now Laramy has to.
Red Hulk on here. Yeah.
All right. So again, this is based off of the comic, as Bethany just mentioned, created by Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill. Alan Moore, of course, being the writer, who, as we said already, he wrote From Hell, V for Vendetta, Watchmen. From Hell actually came out 2 years before this one, so From Hell was first, and then V for Vendetta would be a couple years after it. Watchmen would have a little bit more of a gap before it would be released, but those are the works from Alan Moore. Kevin O'Neill is a British illustrator who he's known for doing two characters I have never heard of. Apparently they're from British comics. One's called Nemesis the Warlock, and the other is called Martial Law. But I was not familiar with either one of those characters.
Is it Martial with an A-L-L or like a martial arts?
No, it's Marshall as in Marshall.
Oh, just A-L. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, like a name.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But the comic was... the movie is primarily based off of what's called a Volume 1, which ran from March of 1999 to September of 2000. It was 6 issues, then put together and called Volume 1. There is Volume 2, which I am going to mention later in the moving panels, because there's one thing that I think does connect, but I don't know how much they knew about Volume 2, because Volume 2 ran from September of 2002 to November of 2003. So that means it started before the movie came out, but was still going.
They would have been making the movie while that was coming out.
So I don't know how much of Volume 2. There's just one element of Volume 2 that I wanted to mention. So I will get into that. But let's go ahead and jump into the characters. This is probably going to be the bulk of the episode, because this is a very character-driven movie. More character than story. But we'll start off with the star himself, Sean Connery, playing Alan Quartermain. Now, according to my research, Sean Connery had turned down the role of the architect in The Matrix back in 1999.
Really?
Yes. He also had turned down the role of Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings.
Sean, like 2 major roles.
Yes.
Okay, but if you really think about the character of Alan Quartermain, he seems like something like that seems like a character that Sean Connery has probably read and probably actually loved the literature character. And the other two, I mean, maybe Gandalf, but that doesn't quite seem his speed. Whereas Quartermain really seems like in the Sean Connery wheelhouse.
Very Bond-esque, if you will.
Yeah. He's an outdoorsman. He's a
that's
an adventurer.
He's an Ernest Hemingway type.
So is like Connery picking this up in hopes that it turns into a Gandalf Matrix franchise thing?
I think the idea was a franchise. I mean, you look at the end of the movie.
Oh yeah, there's supposed to be a sequel.
Yeah, clearly implying.
We're still waiting.
I am. I'll watch
20 years later.
I'll watch it right now, Bethany.
Quartermain's part's gonna be a little different.
A little bit. R.I.P. to the goat.
So the character Alan Quartermain first appeared in a novel from 1885 called King Solomon's Mines, which they do have a little reference to that in the movie. But the novel was written by H. Rider Haggard, and that story does take place in Africa. So we do already have the connection that he is tied, although I think it's South Africa, which is where the book takes place. The comic puts it different. We'll get into that later. But I believe it is South Africa that the book takes place. But he is just an adventurer. It was just those classic stories of the time of just people going on to adventures, the whole kind of like Lost City. And so there's Alan Quartermain. We've already talked about Sean Connery kind of fit the character pretty well. Although he is horrible at keeping his identity secret because it only takes like 30 seconds.
Yeah, to deduce who he is. It's a pretty fun part when Nigel like plays Alan Quartermain. Like that's a cool little piece of the movie there.
It's a neat idea that he would have somebody there to like tell the grand stories of Quartermain so that he's not bothered. But at the same time,
the guy just mentions that he works for the Crown.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh wait, you have important business."
Yeah, I'm willing to give up my entire time.
Nigel.
Poor Nigel. Or again, R.I.P. to Nigel.
R.I.P. Nigel.
R.I.P.
Poor all the old people in that bar.
Yeah,
because they all died.
It exploded real bad.
You're right. It did a big blowy uppy right there.
Yeah. I will say that fire was some bad CGI.
Big fire. Wait a minute, that was CGI?
Fire bad.
The fire was, yeah.
Oh, man,
They didn't really just blow up that building. That's so much cheaper, actually.
I thought that was where the bulk of the budget went, was the explosion.
Trust me, it was not.
All right, moving on. Next up, we have... This one's kind of interesting. We've got Mina Harker, but in the comic, she's Mina Murray, which both names come from the source material. Played by Peter Wilson, Australian actor, who those of you who are probably closer to my age than either of my co-host age probably remember her from the La Femme Nikita TV series that aired on USA in the late 90s.
Did you just speak English, or was that...
No.
She was La Femme Nikita.
Oh, it's French. Okay.
The woman Nikita.
Yeah, I was like, who is Nikita?
It sounds exotic, but it just says the woman Nikita.
Yeah, Nikita Banana, right? That's the at the grocery store. Puns, Laramy.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All of them.
But for those who was not familiar with this character, she is the main female character from Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1897. I wanted to point out the years that each of these literature pieces, because these are books from the era that the movie is supposed to be set, which I do find very interesting.
Well, until.
Yeah. We'll get to one of them in a minute. For those of you more familiar with the 1992 Dracula movie, this is the character played by Winona Ryder. For those of you who are bigger fans of comedy, and you're familiar with Mel Brooks's Dracula Dead and Loving It, this is the character played by Amy Yazbek. So, yeah. So there you go. She is the fiance and later wife of the main protagonist of the movie, which is Harker. That's where the name Harker comes from. She's Murray in the novel. But then she marries.
They make a big, long point multiple times to point out that she is going by her maiden name.
Yeah. Murray is her maiden name. She gets married to Harker, who was the Keanu Reeves character from the 92 movie. But in the graphic novel, but in the actual novel, she is bitten by Dracula, and then Dracula forces her to drink his blood, which, as we know, that would make her a vampire. But then at the end of the book, when they kill Dracula, it cures her. She is no longer a vampire. So I'm confused.
That's just science, Laramy. That's medicine.
That's math.
It's not that. I'm confused as how is she still a vampire in this? If this is taking place, I mean, if you follow it, it takes place roughly a year after the events of Dracula.
Well, let's take a look at Girl Math. So at Girl Math, you find out that she needed to still be vampire to participate in the Extraordinary Gentleman. And so she just returned the cure. She kept the receipt. She returned it. Girl Math.
Okay. I have 3 words written down here that I want to share. Suspension of belief.
Disbelief.
Disbelief, yeah.
No, you have to suspend your beliefs.
Suspend your beliefs, yeah.
To watch this.
But we'll get into more of her in the moving panel section because there's a few other things I want to discuss. But moving on, we'll talk about Captain Nemo. And I'm going to apologize to this actor. This Indian actor has got a wonderful name, but I'm going to assume it is Nasiruddin Shah.
That's pretty good.
But that's good.
Impressive.
He is an Indian actor. He has been in over 100 Bollywood movies.
Wow.
In just the last year.
Wow, Coach is impressed.
And he's been in a handful of American films. Most of them were independent. I think this is his only big budget American movie.
And he did a great job, too. I loved his character,
Yeah, he's good. Of course, those of you who know, Captain Nemo is from the Jules Verne 1869 novel, 20,000 Leagues Under the Seas, although he also appears in the Jules Verne 1875 novel, The Mysterious Island. Of course, Nemo, I think, stands for no one or no name or something. Yeah, something like that. Then we've got Rodney Skinner, the Invisible Man. So in the comics, he is named Holly Griffin. And the name Holly Griffin comes from both the actual book, which is The Invisible Man, 1897, H.G. Wells, because in the book, he's only referred to as Griffin. He has no other name but Griffin. In the comic, he's Holly Griffin, and it is believed that Moore got the name from Dr. Holly Crippen, who was an American doctor who murdered his wife in their home in London, but that was in 1910. So it would have been after where this movie's set, but that's where they believe he got the name.
Don't care. Glad it was included. That's awesome. That's a cool little nugget right there.
Yeah, but he is called Rodney Skinner in the movie because this was the one character that is not public domain.
Oh.
And so they could not get the rights to the Invisible Man. In fact, if you pay attention when they refer to him, he is referred to as an Invisible Man.
Oh, they do, don't they?
Yeah. But he is played by Tony Curran, who as soon as I see him, I go, oh, I can think of so many other times I've seen him. This is not his first nor his last time playing in a superhero comic book based movie. Before this, he played Priest, one of the original vampires in Blade 2. Not an actual comic book character, although again, technically neither is Skinner. He played Boar in Thor: The Dark World. He was in a flashback. It was a small little
Okay.
part.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He played Finn Cooley, who's actually a Punisher character, but appeared in Daredevil season 2.
Yep.
He played Despero in season 8 of The Flash.
I didn't make it that far in the Flash, but I'll take your word.
And most recently, he played Derek Weatherby, who turns out to be a Skrull in the Disney Plus show Secret Invasion.
Spoilers.
Okay, well, I hope that his acting in those was better than in this movie. That's all I'll say.
I mean, you could just see straight through him. Like,
Bum.
Okay, fuss at her, yell at her now. It's a joke we didn't see coming, much like Skinner.
Yeah.
Good, I like it.
There we go. Yeah, come on. If everybody's doing it, everybody's doing it.
But in that, at the end of the novel, Griffin does die. So I did like that they kind of just went ahead and said, yeah, that all happened.
Yeah.
And then Skinner stole the formula from Griffin.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that. To at least make it so they give an explanation. Unlike, again, not explaining how Mina doesn't connect really to her book character. But I like that it's Skinner. I also want to think that the reason they named him Skinner
he don't got
is because he doesn't have any skin.
Doesn't have any skin. Yeah, clearly that's why, right?
There you go. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, played by Jason Fleming, who, as Blake and I have discussed, he was the one who played John Netley in From Hell. But he also has played another comic book character. He is Azazel in X-Men First Class. Very heavily in makeup, so you can't really tell, but that is him. And then some people might recognize him as a character in both Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, as well as Snatch.
Oh, he wasn't he?
Yes, yeah. In
Two,
both of those movies.
Two of my favorite movies. First of all, that's neither here nor there right now. But okay, wow. Okay, well, yeah, and he again does a great job in playing the character here.
Yep, and if you're not familiar with him in that, he's Benjamin Button's dad.
He is too, is he? Oh my gosh! Okay.
Yep.
Great movie, also.
So yeah, I'm not against his Jekyll, because his Jekyll, he does kind of treat his Jekyll the same way Jekyll is portrayed in the comic, as kind of a little
nervous, fidgety,
yeah, always
timid-y kind of character.
Yeah, very timid. Now there is a big difference that I'll go ahead and talk about. The serum. Now in the novel, it starts out with a serum that causes the transformation, but eventually he is able to turn into Hyde without. Yeah. Like Hyde can just take over
at any time. Yeah.
He gets the Hulk disease.
Yeah. Yep.
When he gets angry, he becomes Hulk Hyde.
And that's the way they treat it in the comic, is that just being stressed can turn him into Hyde. But they stuck with the serum because they had to have that as part of the plot of the movie. But again, this is another one where they don't really stick with the novel, because at the end of the novel, Jekyll is now permanently Hyde. And he, in fact, the way it's written at the end, it's Jekyll actually kind of writing his thoughts and saying that he didn't know what would happen to Hyde, because Hyde had been captured and was probably going to be hanged for murder. But he just knew that his death was going to be right now.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew that. But anyway, so he is permanently Hyde at the end. But again, that novel I didn't mention, 1886. So again, right here around the same time. And for those of you who didn't know, written by Robert Louis Stevenson. That is all of the characters. Well, there's one more. But those are all of the League characters from the that is the League in the graphic novel. Now let's talk about the League members that are not from the graphic novel. And we'll start off with Dorian Gray. So Dorian Gray, played by Stuart Townsend, who the only other thing I recognized him from was he played the vampire Lestat in Queen of the Damned. He is not in the comic as a character. There is a picture of Dorian Gray, funny enough, hanging in the secret annex of the League.
Name.
And it's suggested that he was a previous member of the League. That's it.
I think, for my purposes, he was a welcome addition to the movie, though. That character.
Yeah.
Just, again, maybe I love that story too much, and so I'm a little biased. But I thought, and again, I can remember watching this for the first time and thinking, okay, this is obviously who the bad guy of the League is. Like,
he just looks like a bad guy.
Yeah, he just looks like a bad guy. But I enjoyed having him in the film, and all that he kind of brought to it.
Yeah, it worked, and I admit I love the fact that they do the twist where pretty much he is, invulnerable. I love that in that first meeting when all of the Phantom's guys start shooting, like he doesn't. Yeah, just goes.
Gets riddled with bullets, and we talk about the CGI. Well, I remember seeing that for the first time, and like the bullets just heal, like the dust.
Dusting.
Like that's a super cool way
cool.
to heal. Yeah.
And then later, when he and Mina get into the fight, and they both scratch up each other's face.
Yeah.
And then their faces heal up, and he was like, "We could be at this all day."
Because typically it's like a fleshy wound that like heals up, but like that it was dust was
like Captain America.
Was a cool. He could do it all day.
But the novel is 1890, so one of the quote-unquote more recent novels out of all of these.
Super recent. I remember when that was written. Modern. I remember when that came out.
But so the picture of Dorian Gray, written by Oscar Wilde, which I have to admit, I did not remember that was an Oscar Wilde book.
Yeah, that's wild, man.
So I will say, though, I was familiar with this character before. I don't remember when I had learned about Dorian Gray, but I know it was back in school.
I was like,
so
I don't know how old I was, 15, 14. So it doesn't.
I'm just saying, I did know who Dorian Gray was at the time. And then we've got the
the reason I watched this movie in 2003.
Yeah. The way that they Americanized the movie by introducing us to Secret Service agent Tom Sawyer.
Tom Sawyer, yeah.
Played by Shane West, who had already captivated people
Bethany.
with the movie A Walk to Remember.
Oh,
Andy Moore.
I was like, why are we obsessing over this guy? But I never saw A Walk to Remember.
He had just done A Walk to Remember.
Okay.
He would later become a doctor on ER and would have a run.
I thought you were going to say for real doctor. I was real excited for him. I thought, good for him. He became a doctor.
And then, funny enough, I mentioned how Peter Wilson was La Femme Nikita in the late 90s on USA. Well, the CW rebooted the show, just called it Nikita.
Oh.
And he was the main love interest to Nikita.
So he was
on that show.
It was La Femme Nikita then. Is that what his part?
No. He wasn't Nikita. They still had the La Femme Nikita. The show was just called Nikita.
The woman.
Oh.
Nikita.
Yeah, but he was the love interest to Nikita.
Well, I think there needs to be a man Nikita too for equality. And it can be Shane West, Bethany. Okay, it can be Shane.
Look, we just listed 7 actors. One of them was a woman.
What? Yeah. Okay, sorry.
But again,
You're
the
right.
source material that she's
okay. Wait,
yeah, the 1800s. There weren't women around, Bethany. Obviously.
Yeah. Women didn't exist.
Women weren't around.
There was only one woman, and she was there to kiss.
Yeah.
And to save. And that was it.
I think you just described the late 1800s, Bethany.
I think I did.
But of course, Tom Sawyer is from the 1876 novel by Mark Twain, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Although I want to point this out. So, I talked about this with Bethany already. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer is set in the 1840s. I don't think they give an exact date, but it's in the 1840s. Tom Sawyer is roughly 12 years old. In the 1840s.
Okay.
This movie takes place in 1899. Tom Sawyer should be in his 60s by now.
Lazarus Pit, obviously.
Portrait of Dorian Gray.
Portrait of Tom Sawyer.
So a little bit of little stretch there to put Tom Sawyer in this.
He looks really good.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with his skincare routine mainly.
Yeah, I'm interested in his skincare routine.
Yeah, for sure. And his
lots of sunscreen
and whatever he's doing to his hair, it is luscious and gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I wish.
Fan.
And then finally, we've got the villain, the Phantom / James Moriarty, played by Richard Roxburgh, who Bethany probably recognized from Moulin Rouge.
I did.
A Night at the Roxburgh. Okay, good for him.
And then, and then a year later, this guy would choose to do Van Helsing. So he decided to do this movie and Van Helsing within a year.
But he also did Moulin Rouge.
Yeah,
he's really got a type of role that he likes to, or type of movie that he likes to be involved in.
He's here for the drama of it all.
Absolutely. Did you like how they referred to him as M with a James Bond former actor in the movie? I thought that was a cool little.
But I mean, that's from the comic.
That's a fun little touch. But I'm saying like they kept it because they could have.
Oh yeah.
I guess they could have cut it, but to have Sean Connery be a former Bond
in the book, Bond is the character. Well, Bond's grandfather.
Bond's grandfather.
Which I have later.
Yeah.
Later in the notes there.
Jumping the shark there. Sorry.
You're fine. Just finishing up with him. So, part of me actually wondered. This is me pulling this out of my butt. The
Wash
Phantom.
Your hands.
The Phantom. Now, in the movie, it is spelled Phantom. But I almost wonder if it's not supposed to be a reference to the Phantom of the Opera.
Gotta be.
Because he's got the mask.
Yeah.
He's got the scarred face underneath the mask, which of course all ends up being fake.
Yeah.
But you do have the Phantom of the Opera, which again is a novel from around this time. Now, this is a case where the novel came out after. The novel came out in 1910, written by Gaston Leroux, but it is set in the 1880s, so it still fits. Around this.
I can't remember. I think Sean Connery or Alan Quartermain even mentions that his actions are very operatic, or that the name was very
operatic. I don't think I caught that.
That's very operatic of him to be named the Phantom.
And then, as we also mentioned, M, which is the name used in the comic of the head of the British intelligence, which is James Bond's boss and always has been. So that fit, not a literary thing, but it is a connection there. And then we've got James Moriarty, who is famously Sherlock Holmes' most known enemy. First appeared in The Adventure of the Final Problem in 1893, of course created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And in that story, it is meant to be the death of Sherlock Holmes. And the comic actually shows the ending of that novel, of Holmes and Moriarty battling on a cliff, and then they both fall, presumably to their deaths. But the comic then goes into how Moriarty survives the fall, but we are led to believe that Sherlock Holmes did not. Of course, in the novels, Doyle was eventually pressured into bringing Holmes back to life. But those are your main characters, so we spent a good chunk of time talking about them, so let's make this quick. But of all these characters, who do you want to see again, and who do you wish would have their final chapter written?
Oh, love it! Love the literary little pun there. So who do I want? Who do I want to see less of to have their final chapter written? I want to go with that one first. It's probably, I'm sorry, Bethany. It's Mina Harker. As
the only female character, and who is the lead character in the book, and they cut her part down so much.
I was going to say, as you stated, what it really is she doing in the movie? Now, it's not her fault.
So maybe give her back her role that she had in the beginning, so that maybe the one woman that they put in the movie.
They certainly could.
They could. They won't.
They won't. So that's why I'm gonna. So why even have her there? Yeah. Why
even have her there is what you're saying.
I appreciate you helping me along with that, Bethany.
Yeah.
So I didn't get canceled on this podcast. So Bethany agrees with me, everyone. So
you don't.
Yeah. Who I want to see more of? Hyde. easily. Like, I would love to see more of Hyde. So those are my two. I am sorry again, Bethany.
So the character I would like to see more, I'm actually going to go in the opposite direction. I would much rather see more Mina. I did not finish the novel. We'll get into that during the moving panels section as to why. But it was kind of interesting to see that there was a female character and she was the driving force of getting the group together. Like, she was being told, like, hey, go here, but she was the mastermind behind making sure all of this stuff came together. And it was nice to see in a movie that in a book that did not care anything about women at all, to actually have one character, you know, who she was the HBC. She was the one there. She was the head lady in charge.
HLIC there.
HLIC. And so yeah, I would like to have seen her have a more important, instead of, now granted, in the novel they make every point to like shoot her down a peg. Like, they're constantly talking about, like I said earlier, that she goes by her maiden name to point out that she was connected to a man and is for some reason no longer connected to a man. She is made to be bait. She has to, you know, pretend that she is a sex worker just so that they can try to find Hyde. And she almost dies multiple times because of this. And then Quartermain spends like every panel that he's not like talking down to her directly, he spends that time talking about what a harpy she is and that he hates that she made him get sober and she's awful and how dare she exist. And in this, like, she has one moment where she's being held hostage and he's like, haha, now they can't save you or whatever. And she goes, oh, you thought I would need saving. And you're like, yay, feminism at last. And then the rest of it, it's just like she barely gets to do a little bit of science and then she gets backstabbed by Dorian Gray. She just doesn't have a lot in the movie, and I would have liked to have seen more of her character as a driving force throughout it. The character I would like to see less, and it is because of how despicable he was in the book, is the Invisible Man.
Yeah.
Like, okay. As little as you see him, I'd like to see less.
I didn't feel like I could go with him because we saw so little of him already.
I mean, he's not in it very much, but like the little bit he is, he's kind of like, he's got these little snarky one-liners. He's not as despicable as he is in the graphic novel, but he does take his time. Like, he makes a point to assault the one female character.
Oh yeah,
in the
he
whole
definitely
movie.
does do some grabbing.
And his
because.
comment is, haha, I've been wanting to do this the whole time. Great. So glad.
Only reason I joined the team was
the only reason. I have always wanted to assault women. Read my graphic novel.
If it makes you feel any better, one of my biggest gripes with the movie is the going back and forth between using CGI for his face and actual and makeup. Like, pick one or the other. Like, either he's going to be in makeup or you're going to see. I
get the reason why they had to do that with money. Like,
they
had to pay Sean Connery that day.
Yeah.
So he had to have on makeup. He had to actually be on set.
I'll just make mine quick. I'd like to see more Jekyll and Hyde, and I'd like to see less Tom Sawyer.
Is that just because of how much Bethany likes Shane West?
No. I just think he was completely unnecessary.
I'd like to kill him, actually.
I just think he was completely unnecessary.
He saved Venice, Laramy.
What seems to be the problem, pal?
There's just so much pain in the world, so many issues. I don't think I can bear it.
Well, friendo, it sounds like you could use a dose of pop culture roulette.
Pop culture roulette? What's that? Some sort of pop culture themed podcast or something?
That's right, sonny boy. When hope seems far, dive into some PCR.
But I already get my entertainment news from Variety.
Huh, that's pretty good. If you're a chucklehead, PCR gives you news you need, condensed, unfiltered, and raw, from three nerds who know a little something about something.
Wow, okay, sign me up.
That's the spirit. Pop Culture Roulette. New episodes every Monday, available on all major podcast directories.
All right, let's get into the moving panels. Again, the primary inspiration for this was Volume 1. of it. So we're going to kind of hit volume 1. Again, this novel starts off with Mina. She is divorced from her husband, which again, at the end of the Dracula book, she has married. But according to this, she has divorced her husband. The movie has him die, is what they do in the movie. But she's divorced. But she is the one who's forming the team. She's kind of the leader of the team. She gets her orders from Campion Bond, who is not stated, but it has been said that he is supposed to be the grandfather of James Bond. And then she gets with Nemo, who has already been recruited. That was kind of an odd one there. It was like
that's kind of in the book, in the movie too. Is Nemo's just there already?
Present.
And they do have which I actually got a kick out of, that his first mate is named Ishmael. In the novel, it's a throwaway line where Nemo calls him his mate, and he says, "Captain, call me Ishmael." And then, of course, they threw that line into the movie, so I got a kick out of that. Little Moby Dick reference. Mm-hmm. They do find Quartermain in the book. It's in Egypt, so still Africa, but it is Egypt. But the big difference here is, instead of just being kind of semi-retired, he is actually an opium addict.
Yeah.
And is coming out of a opium high or something when Mina finds him.
And then I would like to point out, like, right out of the gate, we're like 3 pages into the novel, and she's like there to see him, and then these 2 men come in and like hold her down and try to assault her. And that's how we're gonna start this story.
It is Alan Moore,
it is,
Bethany.
It's Alan Moore's favorite thing to do to women, is to depict them being assaulted. Apparently.
And to make men opium addicts, apparently. So
yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that with the connection to From Hell.
Yeah.
Then they go after Hyde, who is in Paris, so that's the same with the movie. But in the book, they are actually assisted in tracking down Hyde by C. Auguste Dupin, who, for those of you who don't know, is a character from Edgar Allan Poe stories. Then once they get Hyde, then they go to an all-girls school undercover to investigate some cases of immaculate conception.
The worst part, it's honestly not too long after that where I just said, I'm out. I'm done.
I was going to ask if that's when you kind of checked out from the...
Pretty much. It's so disgusting. And then, like, I just don't think I could get past the fact that after they discovered that's what he was doing, that's why he was there. Yeah, they detained him or whatever, but they're like, look, if you help us, we're going to completely clear your name and pardon you. You can go about doing what you're doing, and we're going to cure you so that people can see you. Doesn't that sound great? We're going to improve your life after you've assaulted young girls, impregnated at least 3 of them. We watched you do one of them.
Whose name, by the way, is Pollyanna.
Oh, yeah.
When he is caught in the act, the girl's name is Pollyanna, which can't be coincidence that that's a reference to the 1913 Eleanor Porter novel.
Yeah.
I mean, they do, at least in the... They do tone it down some in the book, or in the movie. In the movie.
He only mildly assaults Mina.
Yeah.
But they make him just a thief. And they do say that if he helps, that he will get the cure. So we do get a better version of the Invisible Man, at least in the movie.
More sanitized version, which honestly works. Like, I don't understand why that had to be part of the book. Did you see anything? There was something really weird in that scene where they go to the school, and on the outside of the school, there's like written on the outside of the school, it says Schadenfreude is a German word for pretty much finding pleasure in people's misfortune. And so I didn't know if there was any sort of reasoning out there as to why.
Intentional, yeah.
Man, I'm sure Alan Moore had a reason.
I'm sure he did.
But Yeah.
Probably hated his own reasons for it, to be honest. As with everything he did.
And that's where he found his joy.
That is, in hatred.
Yeah.
His own misery, he found joy in it.
Yeah, check out that episode where Blake, Chad, and I talk about Alan Moore, and you'll hear us talk about all of that. So we now have the League, because again, that is all there is to the League in the novel. We then find out what their mission is. Their mission is to stop a crime lord by the name of the Doctor, which the Doctor is meant to be another literary character. He is Fu Manchu, the character created by Sax Rohmer, but trademark actually prevented that name from being used, which Chad and I actually discussed several years ago. You go back into the archives. We did a one-shot about Shang-Chi, because Shang-Chi in the comics was originally the son of Fu Manchu. And then later that had to be changed because Marvel no longer had the rights to the name Fu Manchu. So here's another incident. Although I was not against not doing this story.
It was super racist.
Yeah. So honestly, even the way O'Neill draws
all of the Asian characters.
Yeah, there were a couple, and I can't remember the graphic novel well enough to be able to comment on specifics, but there were a couple of lines, even in the movie, where I was like, oh, this is a little, where I think Sean Connery refers to them traveling to the Dark Continent at one point in time.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I was like,
say that.
There's a couple of things kind of I can't recall, but I was like, oh, glad we've evolved a little bit, you know.
Like, when I first started reading it, I was like, was this written in the 80s? I don't understand.
Yeah,
I could honestly but then he was like, no, it was released in 99 to 2000. I was like, well, that sucks.
Yeah,
that sucks really, really bad.
Even the change over the last couple of decades and how we understand. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That is honestly, after they introduced the Doctor character and all of that scene, I just said, I'm done. I don't enjoy this book. I've made it halfway through the first volume. The story just got, the plot has just started. I've been introduced to the characters, hate all of them. And the plot was introduced, don't care about it. It's super racist. It's super sexist. I don't want to put myself through this. And that's when I just said, I'm out.
Fair and valid points, all of them. You won't find any argument here as far as the graphic novel goes.
So in the graphic novel, there is no storyline about trying to get the secrets of these characters from the League, which that plot even has, to me, some problems. So the first comes when the Phantom shows up at Dorian Gray's place, which is your first huge hint that Dorian Gray is in on it.
Right.
But he shows up and his intent is to kill them right then, right there. They haven't gotten Jekyll and Hyde yet.
True.
So if part of your evil plan is to do what you're planning on doing, why don't you wait until they get Hyde before?
Yeah.
Maybe it was a plot to try to get them to trust Dorian Gray. So they allowed him into the group. Like, Dorian Gray is you look at him and you're like, I don't trust you.
He's skeevy.
And he's very skeevy. And so they walk in, and if he acts like, no, I don't want it. No, and then they get attacked, he helps them fight back. And then he says, fine, I'll join you. They're more likely to trust him than, say, if he had just been like, yeah, let's go, come on.
I mean, there may be some credence to that, as in the movie, no one firing a gun can hit the broadside of a barn except for Alan Quartermain. So I don't know if those were intentional misses on the part of the Phantom's henchmen there, because you've got machine guns and you're firing down on a target in a barrel, you should be able to hit something, and no one is ever hit. So it could be
Well, they hit Dorian.
Well, that's because they know they can hit him because he's in on it.
But in the graphic novel, it's a plot about having to procure this stuff called cavorite, which is named for its inventor, Selwyn Cavor, who is a character, again, from literature, from H.G. Wells' story, The First Men in the Moon. We got that. We get Mina and Griffin questioning a man named Kwong Lee, also a literary character from Thomas Burke's 1916 short story called Limehouse Nights, where he serves as the narrator. They discover the doctor's ship, which is called the Dragon. They steal the Cavorite. They hand it over to Bond, which then Griffin decides to follow. So we're back to, okay, we're connecting. This is where we get this plan in the movie of having the Invisible Man end up following the bad guys. We have the same thing here. Griffin follows Bond to M, and then he's the one that discovers M is actually Moriarty. Then they actually go back and explain how Moriarty survived the end of the final problem. We see him being rescued by Bond, as well as another character named Colonel Sebastian Morin, who is another literary character and enemy of Sherlock Holmes. We find out that Moriarty not only controls the British intelligence organization, but he is also in control of the criminal underworld of West London. We also find out he has his own airship and plans to bomb East London. So again, loose connection there. We get the part where the Phantom is bombing Venice. He does start bombing East End. The League then chase down the airship, and they do it in a hot air balloon called the Victoria, which is another literary reference from Jules Verne's novel 5 Weeks in a Balloon. Hey, I bet some of you thought I was going to say
Around the world in 80 days.
But it is not. It is from the novel 5 Weeks in a Balloon.
But Jules Verne, he loved air travel.
Yeah, just a big fan.
And water travel.
Big fan.
But then another connection is at the end when they confront Moriarty. In the novel, it is Mina and Quartermain. Quartermain is shot by Moriarty. Mina then breaks the Cavorite. Moriarty grabs for it, and he is launched into the sky because Cavorite is some sort of like anti-gravity something.
They yeeted him out of the
just
comic.
yeeted into the stratosphere.
So he survived a fall and then dies via a lift. So
Should have called Uber.
The irony. Oh, yikes. Again, no.
Unlike the movie, in the novel, Quartermain is not killed by the shot from Moriarty. But when all is said and done, we end up finding out that Mycroft Holmes, which is Sherlock Holmes' brother from the novels, is the new Elm, and that Bond is actually still working for him, even though Bond was revealed to be kind of a henchman. But Mycroft says that he finds it better to have someone like him within his sights, I think is kind of the way he says it at all times. So there you go, and there you have it. Volume 2, like I said, came out when the movie was being made, so there's not really a lot of connection. In all of Volume 1, it is never revealed that Mina is a vampire. The only hint you get is the scarf she wears, which she refuses to take it off. Which I actually saw a meme about this the other day. Me being the age that I am, remembers the story.
Girl,
if you take it off, her head will fall off.
The girl with the green ribbon.
The girl with the green, yeah.
Okay, good. Glad we all thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not until Volume 2 where Quartermain actually gets a glimpse underneath her scarf. Her scarf kind of comes loose, and he sees the vampire bite. But that's it. That's all we get. So her whole story was almost completely made up for the movie. Her abilities, especially the one where apparently she's like Ant-Man and can control bats.
Control bats,
I don't know where all the bats came from.
The cave.
That was all made up for the movie. None of that is in the comics.
Alfred sent them.
But I will...
This connects to Batman too?
I will point out, and spoiler for anybody who wants to read this, at the end of Volume 2, Mr. Hyde is killed by the aliens. But then they connect.
What a sentence! First of all, sorry. What a sentence. Mr. Hyde is killed by the aliens.
Yeah. But they do connect that later to I think it's called Serpentine Park, and Quartermain mentions they're going to rename it Hyde Park, which is a real place.
Yeah, it's an actual spot. Yeah.
They're going to rename it Hyde Park in honor of Hyde's sacrifice that he makes at the end of this story.
So this is all basically a documentary, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, I love that stuff. I love when they connect it.
They tie it all in. Yeah.
The movie obviously ends with a opening to there's going to be a sequel and Quartermain is going to come back to life because they established Africa won't let him die. So he's buried in Africa and it's implying that he's coming back to life.
The sequel will be Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
In the graphic novel, Quartermain actually does become immortal.
I mean, he said Africa would not let him die. Yeah, I wish, again, I wish they would have dug more into that, to be honest with you. I would have liked to have seen maybe some flashbacks in the movie of this encounter with the so-called witch doctor and how that occurred. Because I do like the idea of him being immortal for a franchise, because I would have liked to have seen a second one. But yeah, I wish they would leaned more into that than they did.
So yeah, that's the loose connections that the graphic novel is. It's such a loose adaptation, which is one of the reasons why Alan Moore, again, he doesn't like anything. He sometimes doesn't even like his own work. It's not even movie adaptation.
I think he likes himself very much.
Like we talked about in the Alan Moore episode about how much we like Killing Joke.
Love it.
Alan Moore does not.
Yeah, no.
Alan Moore thinks it's one of the worst things he's ever written.
He's that guy whose whole personality is just to dislike things, I think. And he does a great job of playing that role.
All right, well, let's get into it. Even though you kind of get an idea from what we talked about, let's do Bag It, Stack It, and Trade It.
And it's the movie?
This is just for the movie.
Just to clarify.
We do this one just for the movie. So, Bethany, since you're already ready to go. So, for the movie. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
So I will say, because for the novel, it's a trade it. Like, just get rid of it. Don't even trade it. Like, just use it to keep yourself warm at night.
If
you're out of firewood.
Use the time machine to go back in time and not ever write it.
Right. It's as I've already said, it's sexist, it's racist, it's boring, and it's not good. The movie, I will say, is kind of a romp. It's a little silly. You've got to suspend your disbelief a little bit. But if you do that, it's kind of a fun adventure. It doesn't quite hold up to what we've gotten accustomed to over the years. I do think I remembered it a bit more fondly than I remembered when I actually watched it. But I will say it's a stack it. Like, if somebody says, like, oh, I've never seen that movie, I've heard it's terrible. It's like, no, give it a try. It's actually pretty interesting. And it can spark, like, interest in other things, which I think is always the goal, or it should be the goal of works like this. Is it should bring attention to classic literature that has shaped what we currently enjoy and makes you go back to appreciate it.
I probably agree 100% with that. It's a stack it for me. I'm right there with Bethany. It's a piece of gateway media, so to speak. Like, it allows you to access and discuss other pieces of classic literature and perhaps get people interested in something they wouldn't otherwise be interested in. It's a fun movie. You've got to go into it knowing what you're going to get, and you will be pleasantly surprised, I think. And just to kind of cap this off, if you do want more League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Hulu/Disney Plus is going to be launching a series debuting in 2024, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So,
heck yeah,
just to keep an eye out for that.
Are they, though? Because I keep hearing about this is happening. Like, I don't believe it until I see it.
Yeah, the last thing I read, and I actually double-checked myself while we were on here, was that sometime in the first Allen Quartermain of 2024, they're going to be releasing it. So, fingers crossed. I would love that. I think
These jokes are for me.
Shane West is playing Alan Quartermain, apparently. So.
So for me, the movie, I will even say the movie and the comic are both stack it. I don't dislike the comic as much as Bethany. I actually enjoy and have enjoyed reading it a lot better than some of the other Alan Moore stuff I've read, especially recently. I'm not saying it's perfect.
It's not.
But I mean, if you're interested, I wouldn't say...
I would not. I'd pass.
Give it a read. The movie is kind of the same. I I've stated before, me, Blake, Chad, we've all stated we actually like this
Yeah,
movie.
it's
You
enjoyable.
want to call it a guilty pleasure, you can call it a guilty
Sure.
pleasure. Is it a perfect movie? Absolutely not. Like we talked about the suspension of disbelief. I mean, it doesn't make any sense that when they capture Hyde, that he is wearing a top hat that is Hyde size, considering that the clothes are always Jekyll size and rip up when he turns into Hyde.
He's got a great.
There's this fancy club that he goes to that requires you wear a top hat, and he does not want to get turned out of that.
Great tailor,
It also makes no sense that Tom Sawyer could pretty much be in a Fast and the Furious movie, driving car for the Nautilus.
Yeah, sorry.
Considering they
Sorry.
had just been introduced to what a car was.
And then he says, want to go for a spin, which is absolutely not his phrase back then, okay?
Yeah.
It is now. Tom Sawyer created it.
I'm sorry.
I would believe that Mark Twain would create a phrase like go for a spin.
Go for a spin. Okay.
Yeah. There's quite a few things. I mean, it was cool and all, but Quartermain lifting the guy up with the table and then driving him through the rhino horn.
Yeah.
One, overkill.
Literally.
Yeah, but two, like, how does he have this strength? Because he's not picking the man up. He's picking the table up
That lifts
with the man
on
just
it.
on the other side. It was so weird. So yeah, there's a lot of faults in this. Don't make a lot of sense, but if you just go in watching it just for fun, it is fun. So I'm gonna say stack it there. But we'll go ahead and wrap things up for this talk. We are now 75% of the way done with our Alan Moore retrospective.
Rounding third on the way home, Laramy.
Yeah, we will go into a lot of depth with Watchmen this coming March, just a couple months away. And we're gonna hit everything Watchmen, and so that'll give us our nice little wrap up to the Alan Moore. What do you call it? It's not a trifecta because there's 4 of them, but
quadrant.
Foursquare of death.
Foursquare.
Yeah. There you go. All right, so thanks Bethany and Blake for joining me on this. It's a very, very out there conversation about the ups and downs of this movie that essentially we like.
Yeah. No. Yeah. For everything we've said, I enjoy the movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoy the movie.
Yeah, Bethany, we get it. Okay, the movie. Yeah, we know.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Rate and review the show. We're gonna go ahead and end things there. So for today, for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.